Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another OELN review, original English light novel review, which I haven't done in a while, but CM McDivitt was nice enough to send me his book a couple months ago, and this book is called I Brought Our World's Magic to This Other World. It's kind of a isekai kind of story with some elements of Dr. Stone or something like that. So, yeah, it's written by CM McDivitt, like I said. That's what the spine looks like, and here's the back. Of course, this part of the book needs some work, but it is the best he could do at the time, so it's understandable. I really appreciate that he did anything at all. Like, you know, some authors might have just put a blank page with a title on it. He at least tried to make it look interesting, and I really appreciate that. I think he did a great job. Even if it's not like the most appealing yet, it could eventually become a pretty interesting kind of look for the books if he manages to make them all look the same, or if he decides to upgrade into a more, you know, exciting cover. So yeah, it's published through Amazon. I think it's self-published, but he, you know, has Amazon do print on demand anytime anyone orders anything from him, which is interesting. This one was printed in Coppell, Texas, which is nice. That's kind of in the same, it's not really near me if I remember correctly, but it's interesting that it was a Texas book. I'm guessing it's because he ordered it and then it was sent to me from Texas. Kind of interesting. The demographic seems to be YA. And the genres here are isekai and medieval fantasy. This obviously has no adaptation, and my rating for this is a 3.5. So since this is an OELN, and it's really actually more useful for me to tell you kind of things that might also help the author, I'm going to say things about that instead, and then maybe I'll look into the regular structure that I have, right? So the premise of this book, because that is still important, is basically there's this army brat kind of guy who also happens to be a weeb. His name is Alex, and he gets isekai'd with his phone and some other kind of key things that he has with him. And he ends up in this medieval fantasy world, and he has to survive, and he uses science in order to survive. It seems like the author is a physics major or something like that. He studied a lot of science, and so he is looking to make something with what he knows, which is totally fair and totally understandable. I actually quite agree with. I think that's good. You know, even Boichi, the guy that draws for Dr. Stone, he studied physics in university in order to be able to draw sci-fi manga. So it makes a lot of sense that that happened. But the story is interesting. It's set up in a pretty good way. It's isekai, standard things. We don't meet a god or anything like that. It's not that type of isekai. It's one of these unexplained ones. He just ends up in a different world. And the different world is very standard medieval fantasy world. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a little bit of an unexplained situation with the technology of this world. It's very asynchronous or just weird. Like, he falls in line with a medieval fantasy kingdom. However, the enemies of this kingdom are the Empire, and they happen to have diesel punk style aesthetics to them. They have these walkers, they have these motorcycles, they have, you know, kind of mecha-esque kind of things to them, and it's really different. And so I don't understand where this difference comes from, because the world building in this book is kind of weak. It doesn't really do that well to explain things, right? So the plot line is good. You know, he wakes up, he goes somewhere, he meets a girl, he joins the girl's people as they journey through this like refugee caravan to this place called the Haunted City, and then there's some battles and excitement along the way. So the plotline is good. It could have been fleshed out a bit in some points, and like a lot of points. Actually, this book is actually relatively short, and this shortness actually kind of hinders it sometimes. It feels like things could have been explained a lot more. There could have been a bigger development of the world building. There's some medieval fantasy, there's bad guys that have diesel punk aesthetics, there's wolf people, there's mind magic, there's abiders, which are these like people with magical spirits of some kind, and there's generic magic as well, but it doesn't make any sense. Like any of the differences don't really make sense. There's also the addition of this fantasy language, which kind of works because you get a glossary at the back, or a thesaurus, no, what was it called? A dictionary here at the back, which is good, but it's not used enough to warrant it being there, or it doesn't really seem to be all that important to the wolf people that use it, so I'm not sure that it was necessary. However, it is kind of a standard thing for fantasy world authors to create at least some language parts in order to make their world feel a lot more realistic. However, it wasn't necessary in this case, in my opinion. But, you know, if that's the author's intent, it's totally fair for it to be there. I'm just saying it didn't really matter to me. It didn't really seem to add anything to the wolf people, in my opinion, in this case. The mind magic and the abiders thing was interesting. The mind magic people are called will walkers. They're basically able to affect your mind, change up what you're going to do a little bit, which is interesting. That was working really well. But the mechanics of it weren't ever, introduced or explained. And you would think that Alex, the science guy, would be really interested in learning why the magic works the way it does. Abiders make a kind of situation happen once or twice, and again, we don't get any explanations. I don't know if this is because the author is trying to make a soft magic system, or if because he hasn't really figured out the rules for his hard magic system and didn't want to explain them if he wasn't able to, make them make sense within his own world building, or if it was just something of an oversight. Either way, I just think it needs to be explained a little bit, because you can't have like a scientist guy be in a magic setting and not be curious about why the magic works the way it does, right? It just doesn't work, in my opinion. Like, this character type can't exist in this kind of setting, right? So that's just me. In terms of characters, we have Alex, Jesse, Becca, and Duke Roland. So the Duke actually is just a Duke. He doesn't really have anything specific going on, but Alex, Jesse, and Becca are the three main characters. Alex is the main character. He is the isekai science user, basically. There's Jesse. She is a warrior woman. She's kind of a sergeant or lieutenant or something in the Duke's army. And Becca is the wolf girl. She is a healer of some sort. She has magic she can heal with, and she's also good at apothecary kind of things, right? So the issue with the characters isn't really glaring all that much. Honestly, it's just a preference thing. And I think that there's a big case of insta-love between them. So Alex basically immediately meets Jesse and immediately wants to get with her. And then Becca meets Alex and immediately wants to get with him. And so there's this immediate love triangle. It feels too quick. It seems like Jesse is really interested in Alex very quickly. And I just think it doesn't make sense within the setting of the world. If there are these refugees that are trying to get to the haunted city, and Jessie happens to be a warrior woman, even though she might be interested in this kid and this teenager, and she is a teenager herself, she would probably be mature enough as a soldier to be like, hey, I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to do something else. Becca seems to be really interested in Alex too quickly. Honestly, the issue is the quickness. It's not necessarily all the other things, but the other things kind of make the quickness even more apparent because they happen too fast, right? And I'm not saying that light novels don't have this issue, but usually in light novels, it takes about 200 pages for the characters to really start connecting with each other, especially in these like more like not super battle-oriented fantasy isekais. Like Realist Hero, it takes a long time for the Realist Hero characters to get to the point that they're interested in each other romantically. So, I think that it's just a matter of time and making that time feel long, more than it is about the characters meeting too fast. Because at the end of the day, this is all made up, right? So it doesn't have to be exactly realistic. It just has to feel realistic. It doesn't have to actually be so, right? So I think that it was a problem of the romance happening too quick, in my opinion, and it's not really a diss or anything. It's just saying that for my personal preference, it just happens too quickly, in my opinion, and it kind of makes it seem unnecessary when it happens that fast. Other than that, there really isn't any art here. I really would have liked some, but I understand that this is not possible for the author at this current moment. So, yeah. However, he did add a map, which is interesting. I actually quite like the addition of the map. However, I think the map here could have been made better. So this looks like it was in color and then was printed in black and white. If that is the case, I would recommend that he makes a black and white map where most of the situations are developed in a different way. Instead of having all these colors that turn into these gray blobs, I would recommend just having outlines of all of the things in black and leaving everything in white with black lettering all over the place for all of the places, right? Also, this is a big map, and the situation that occurs only happens in a very small place. So it's not necessary to have a map of this giant continent when everything happens on a road and then on a little city, right? So he could have made a different kind of map to represent that. Also, this map could have been flipped and fit in one page and not have this horrible like gutter in between them. However, that's just kind of a thing that it's probably just due to the fact that this is his first book. I don't really have any issues with anything in this story. It's just mostly preference thing, and I think that it could have been developed a little bit more. Overall, I did enjoy it. It's a 3 out of 5. It was enjoyable, but not amazing. But I am willing to read the next book, and I'm actually, I think he already sent it to me, so I will have a review for it out whenever I read it. But I definitely recommend this book if you like isekai things, and if you want a little bit more of a Western take on the isekai genre. It does have a little bit of work needed in the romance, and some of the scenes need more explanation. But overall, I think that it is good, and it has a lot of potential for being great. So that's my review of I Brought Our World's Magic to This Other World by C.A. McDavitt. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please do a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.